The sun rose over the wide-open prairie, casting a golden light on the grass that stretched as far as the eye could see. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of wildflowers and fresh earth. In the distance, a horse ran with a power and grace that made it impossible for anyone to look away. Its coat was dark and shiny, muscles rippling under the skin with every movement. It was free and wild, a spirit that belonged to no one but itself. People in the nearby town had talked about this horse for weeks. Every rancher, every cowboy, had stories about how no one could catch it, how it had thrown off every rope and every attempt to be tamed. It had become a legend, a challenge that many wanted to conquer. Early in the morning, a group of cowboys gathered near the edge of the prairie. They were tall, strong, and confident men who had spent their lives working with horses. They brought ropes, saddles, and a determination to succeed. They laughed and argued, each claiming they would be the one to finally catch the wild horse. Their voices carried across the plains, but they did not notice a young girl standing a short distance away. She watched quietly from behind a small rise in the land, her eyes following the horse as it moved. She did not carry ropes or saddles. She did not shout or boast. She simply observed, learning every twist and turn the horse made. She had grown up near these lands and understood the rhythms of nature in a way that the cowboys could not. She could see the small details they missed, how the horse paused to listen to the wind, how its ears twitched at distant sounds, how it chose certain paths to move safely. She felt a connection to the horse that went beyond fascination. She felt a recognition of freedom, of a spirit that was untamed and honest. The cowboys shouted and mounted their horses, preparing to chase the wild horse. They rode with confidence and strength, thinking that brute force and speed would be enough. They spurred their horses forward, and the sound of hooves echoed across the prairie. The wild horse saw them and began to run faster, its hooves kicking up clouds of dust. It moved with a fluid motion that seemed impossible to follow. The cowboys tried to close in, but each time they got near, the horse would leap to the side or gallop away with sudden speed. Frustration grew among them. One cowboy shouted that the horse would not last long in its freedom, that sooner or later it would be caught. Another laughed, saying that patience and skill were the only ways to succeed, but even he doubted their chances. The girl watched the scene unfold, her heart aching for the horse. She knew that force would never work. The horse was smart and cautious, and every aggressive move only made it more wary. She decided to move closer, keeping low and careful not to disturb the horse. She spoke softly, using words not meant to command, but to soothe. The horse paused, ears twitching as it listened. There was no sudden movement, no rush to approach. She stayed still, letting the horse see that she was not a threat. Days passed in this quiet ritual. She returned each morning and evening, bringing water and sometimes food, always speaking gently and moving slowly. She noticed how the horse reacted to the small things. A soft tone of voice would calm it. A careful step closer would earn its trust. She learned the patterns of the horse's behavior. When it grazed, it liked to be alone. When it ran, it needed space. She understood that the key was not to dominate, but to respect its freedom. The cowboys continued their efforts. Growing more frustrated each day, they set traps and tried different strategies to catch the horse. Sometimes they would circle it from different directions. Other times they would leave food as bait. But the horse always avoided them, sensing danger where they thought there was none. They began to notice the young girl visiting the horse and laughed, mocking her gentle ways. They could not understand why she spent so much time without trying to force the horse. They called her naive and foolish, saying she would never succeed. But she did not mind their words. She felt a quiet confidence in what she was doing. She understood that the horse was not just an animal to be caught. It was a spirit to be respected and understood. One afternoon, a sudden wind blew across the prairie. Dust swirled, and the horse lifted its head, ears pricked. It was nervous, alert to every sound. The girl approached slowly, her movements calm and steady. She whispered softly, telling the horse that she was there and that it was safe. The horse hesitated, eyes wide, muscles tense. Then, as if sensing her sincerity, it relaxed slightly, lowering its head and grazing again. The girl smiled quietly. It was a small victory, a sign that trust could grow where fear once ruled. She stayed with the horse until the sun began to set, watching it move and listening to the sounds of the prairie. The cowboys rode past, their voices carrying but distant, unable to see the subtle connection forming between the girl and the horse. As weeks passed, the bond deepened. The horse began to recognize her presence and stopped running at her approach. It would graze calmly when she was near, sometimes even nuzzling her hand. The cowboys noticed the change and were surprised. They could not understand how this small girl, with no ropes or force, could achieve what they had failed to do. Some of them began to watch more closely, curious, and perhaps a little humbled. They saw that the girl moved with patience, observing every reaction of the horse, never rushing and never forcing. She learned to read its moods and needs, adjusting her approach with care. One morning, as the sun rose over the prairie, the girl sat on a small hill, watching the horse run freely across the grass. She felt a deep sense of connection, not just with the horse but with the land itself. Every sound, every movement, every breath of wind was a part of a world that she understood in a way that cowboys could not. She knew that the coming days would bring challenges, that the cowboys would continue to try and capture the horse. But she also knew that she had begun to form a bond that could not be broken by ropes or shouts. It was a bond built on patience, respect, and trust. The wild horse had met someone who could understand its heart, someone who could be a friend without trying to own it. The girl stayed there long after the horse had wandered away, watching the shadows stretch across the prairie and feeling the quiet power of the land around her. It was the beginning of a journey that would test courage, patience, and understanding, and she was ready to face it all, step by step. With the horse beside her, the girl returned to the prairie the next morning, before the sun rose. The air was fresh and quiet, with only the soft rustle of grass in the breeze. She moved carefully across the land, her eyes scanning for any sign of the wild horse. She had learned to read the subtle signs that showed where it had been the night before. Broken twigs, flattened grass, hoof prints, and the soft soil all told her a story that the cowboys could not understand. She followed these signs quietly, making sure not to frighten the horse. She knew that every step she took mattered, and that patience was more important than speed. As she moved closer, she spotted the horse grazing in a small clearing. Its coat shone in the early light, and it lifted its head occasionally to listen to the sounds around it. The girl stayed low and whispered softly. The horse froze for a moment, but then relaxed as it recognized her presence. This small moment of trust was a reward for the careful attention she had given. Over the next days, she began spending more time near the horse. She learned which areas it preferred and how it moved when it felt safe. She brought water and sometimes small amounts of food, always leaving it in a way that allowed the horse to approach on its own terms. She never tried to touch it unless it showed that it was ready. She noticed the way it reacted to different sounds, the wind through the trees, the distant calls of birds, even the movements of other animals. Each observation helped her understand what the horse liked and what it feared. She adjusted her movements accordingly, stepping softly, speaking gently, and never making sudden gestures. Every time the horse accepted her presence, even for a few moments, she felt a sense of connection that could not be described. It was not about control, it was about understanding. Meanwhile, the cowboys continued their attempts. They rode across the prairie in groups, trying to corner the horse. Sometimes they set traps, other times they rode in long circles hoping to drive it toward them. Their approach was loud and aggressive, full of shouts and heavy hooves. Each time the horse sensed danger, it ran faster, moving in ways that made it impossible to catch. The cowboys grew frustrated and argued among themselves, blaming each other for failures. Some of them began to notice the girl and laughed at her. They could not understand why she spent so much time doing nothing but watching and whispering. To them it seemed weak and useless. But the girl paid them no mind. She knew that her method was different because her goal was not to capture the horse but to be trusted by it. One afternoon, a young cowboy approached her. He had been watching her for some time and was curious. He asked why she did not join the others in trying to catch the horse. The girl explained that the horse was not something to conquer. It was a living being with feelings and instincts. She spoke calmly about patience and observation, about listening and respecting the animal. The cowboy was surprised by her understanding. He had spent years working with horses and had never thought of it this way. He began to see that brute force was not the only way to deal with a wild horse. Although he did not fully agree with her methods, he started to appreciate her patience and insight. As the days turned into weeks, the girl noticed changes in the horse. It began to move closer when she was around. It allowed her to sit quietly nearby while it grazed. Sometimes it even seemed curious about her movements, tilting its head or flicking its ears toward her. These small signs of trust were victories in themselves. She learned to read the horse's body language to understand when it was comfortable and when it was uneasy. She adjusted her own actions based on these signals. If it tensed, she stayed still. If it relaxed, she moved a little closer. Every day she learned more about the ways of the horse and the rhythms of the prairie. One evening, the girl found herself sitting on a small rise, watching the sun sink behind the distant hills. The horse was grazing nearby, unaware of the cowboys who were still trying to find it. She reflected on the contrast between her approach and theirs. The cowboys used force and noise to achieve their goals, but the horse only responded to calm and understanding. She realized that respect could accomplish more than strength alone. It was a lesson not just about the horse, but about the world around her. She felt a quiet pride in what she had achieved, knowing that the bond she was forming was unique and could not be forced or bought. The horse began to follow certain routines that the girl had noticed. It drank at the same water source each morning. It grazed in the same meadows when the day was cool. The girl used these patterns to spend more time near it without disturbing its freedom. She observed how it reacted to the wind, the direction of the sun, and the presence of other animals. She learned which moments were safe for her approach and which required distance. Each day brought a deeper understanding and a stronger connection. The cowboys continued their attempts but never realized the subtle shifts in the horse's behavior that the girl had learned to read. They were too focused on force to notice the quiet signals that showed where the horse would go and what it needed. One morning, the horse faced a minor threat, a sudden movement in the grass that caused it to jump and run. The girl remained calm, speaking softly, moving slowly toward it. She showed no fear and no attempt to restrain it. The horse stopped after a short run, breathing heavily, and then turned to look at her. It sensed her presence as safe. She knelt on the grass, letting it see that she was not there to harm or capture it. Slowly, it approached, sniffing and observing. This small encounter was a milestone. The horse had begun to recognize her not as a threat but as a companion. She felt a sense of wonder at the quiet power of trust. The cowboys, noticing that the horse often remained near the girl without being captured, began to question their own methods. Some of them were frustrated and impatient, others intrigued by what they saw. The girl continued her routine, moving quietly across the prairie, watching, learning, and listening. She realized that the key to forming a true bond with the horse was consistency. Every day she returned, demonstrating patience and respect. Over time, the horse began to anticipate her presence and respond with small gestures of recognition. These moments were fleeting but powerful. Each one strengthened the invisible thread between them, a connection that no rope or trap could break. By the end of the second week, the girl noticed that the horse was showing signs of comfort. It allowed her to sit closer. It followed her gaze. It moved in ways that suggested curiosity rather than fear. She began to feel a deeper understanding of its personality, its fears, its preferences. She learned that the horse loved open spaces where it could run freely, that it enjoyed gentle breezes, that it preferred certain grasses over others. This knowledge was not something that could be forced or demanded. It came from observation and care. The cowboys continued their noisy attempts, but the horse ignored them when it could, choosing instead to remain in safe areas and eventually near the girl who had earned its quiet trust. The prairie itself seemed to support the connection. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying scents and sounds that the girl and horse shared. The sun warmed the land during the day and cooled slowly at night. Birds called in the distance, and other animals moved quietly, creating a symphony of life that the girl learned to interpret. She felt herself becoming part of this world, understanding its patterns and rhythms. The horse was a guide in this journey, teaching her lessons about patience, observation, and the quiet power of empathy. Each day brought new understanding and small victories. The cowboys, despite their strength and skill, were unable to perceive these lessons. They relied on force and speed, missing the subtle beauty of the connection. The girl had with the wild horse. The prairie was alive with the sounds of early morning. Birds called to each other, and the wind moved softly through the tall grass. The girl moved quietly across the land, careful not to disturb the horse that had become the center of her days. She had learned the horse's routines and patterns, and she knew how to approach without causing fear. Each step was measured and slow, each movement gentle. The horse lifted its head as she came near, ears twitching in recognition. It did not run away. Instead, it watched, muscles relaxed, breathing even. The girl felt a deep satisfaction knowing that the bond between them was growing stronger with every visit. The cowboys were becoming more determined. Their frustration grew with each failed attempt to catch the horse. They rode in groups, shouting, driving it from one area to another. Sometimes they used ropes. Sometimes they tried to corner it with multiple horses. But the horse always found a way to escape. Its intelligence and awareness of the land made it impossible for them to trap it. They began to talk about the girl, mocking her for spending so much time near the horse without trying to catch it. Some said she was foolish. Others whispered that she might have a special connection with the animal. The girl ignored their words. She knew her path was different. Force would never win the trust of the horse. Only patience and respect could achieve that. One afternoon, the cowboys set up a large trap near a water source that the horse frequently visited. They hid behind rocks and trees, waiting for the horse to come close. The girl watched from a distance, her heart heavy. She could see the fear in the horse as it approached the trap. It paused, sniffing the air, ears flicking. The girl stepped forward slowly, speaking softly. The horse turned toward her, and for a moment, everything held still. She gestured with her hand, showing the horse the way around the trap. The horse hesitated, but then followed her lead, moving safely past the danger. The cowboys emerged from their hiding places, shouting and angry. They could not understand how the horse had avoided the trap. Some looked at the girl with a mixture of frustration and awe. She said nothing. Simply watched the horse move freely across the grass and felt the quiet power of trust between them. The next days were filled with small victories. The horse began to accept the girl's presence more readily. It grazed calmly when she was near, sometimes moving closer to sniff her hand or watch her carefully. She learned the subtle signals that showed comfort or unease. If the horse twitched its ears or shifted its weight, she knew to stay still. If it relaxed and lowered its head, she could move a little closer. Each interaction taught her patience and observation, skills that the cowboys did not value. She saw the beauty in small details, a slow step, a gentle word, a quiet gesture that could mean the difference between trust and fear. The cowboys continued their noisy attempts, chasing the horse across the plains, circling it from different directions, trying to drive it toward a trap. The horse ran with agility and awareness, avoiding every effort. It knew the land and understood danger in ways that the cowboys did not. Each failure made them more aggressive. They did not see the girl guiding the horse quietly around them, helping it remain safe without force. They were focused on their own strength, missing the subtle dance of trust and freedom that had been growing between the girl and the horse. One evening, a storm approached. Dark clouds rolled across the sky and the wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain. The girl saw the horse in the distance, tense and nervous. She moved toward it, her steps slow and calm. The horse shifted, uncertain at first, but then followed her cues. She led it to a small sheltered area among trees, away from the open prairie. She spoke softly, reassuring it with gentle words. The storm broke with heavy rain and gusting wind, but the horse stayed close to her, trusting her guidance. The cowboys, seeing the storm, retreated to their horses, unwilling to face the harsh weather. The girl remained with the horse until the storm passed, feeling the quiet bond that had grown between them. Over the following weeks, the horse began to show more signs of trust. It allowed her to approach more closely, sometimes grazing near her without moving away. It learned to recognize her movements and voice as safe. She noticed small quirks and preferences, how it liked to roll in soft soil after rain, how it avoided certain paths and favored others. Each detail deepened her understanding and strengthened the connection. She learned that true respect required listening and observing rather than commanding. The horse responded not to dominance, but to care and patience. The cowboys, increasingly frustrated, began to take more risks. They tried driving the horse with groups of riders, using loud noises and sudden movements. The horse reacted with intelligence and speed, avoiding capture every time. The girl observed from a safe distance, understanding the stress this caused the horse. She stayed close enough to guide it if needed, calming it with her voice and gentle presence. She could see how dangerous brute force could be, and she felt a responsibility to protect the horse. Her patience and careful observation allowed her to anticipate the horse's needs and help it avoid harm. One morning, the horse faced a new challenge. A smaller animal, frightened by the approaching cowboys, ran into its path. The horse jumped and bolted, startled. The girl ran after it, speaking softly to calm it. She reached the horse and moved carefully, showing no fear, only calm reassurance. The horse slowed, then stopped, breathing heavily but safe. She stayed with it until it relaxed again, gently guiding it back to a familiar area. This experience reinforced the bond between them. The horse had learned to trust her not because of force, but because of her understanding and patience. The girl continued her daily visits, each one deepening the connection. She learned more about the horse's habits and moods. She observed how it reacted to changes in weather, the presence of other animals, and even the movements of the cowboys. She adapted her own behavior to match its needs, always careful not to startle or frighten it. Slowly, the horse began to seek her presence, grazing or resting nearby when it could have fled. The cowboys watched from a distance, noticing the changes but unable to comprehend them. They relied on force, unaware of the quiet power of trust and empathy that the girl had cultivated. The girl found joy in small moments, a gentle nuzzle of the horse's nose, a calm gaze shared. Across the grass, a quiet run. Through the prairie, where they moved together in harmony. Each day brought new lessons in patience, observation, and understanding. She saw that the connection with the horse was not about ownership, but about respect and partnership. The cowboys continued their noisy attempts, but the horse had found safety and comfort in the presence of someone who understood it. She had become a guide and companion, someone who could protect and nurture the wild spirit without trying to control it. The bond between them grew stronger as the days passed. The horse began to follow subtle cues from the girl without being forced. It learned to trust her judgment and respond to her calm presence. She knew that every interaction mattered and approached each day with care and intention. The cowboys, despite their strength and experience, could not compete with the quiet power of understanding that had developed. The girl felt a sense of fulfillment and connection that went beyond words. The prairie was alive with life, and she and the horse were part of its rhythm. She knew that challenges would come, but with patience and respect. She could face them and protect the wild spirit she had come to care for deeply. The morning was quiet, with mist rising from the prairie, softening the shapes of the hills and trees in the distance. The girl walked carefully, her eyes scanning the land for the familiar dark shape of the wild horse. She moved with slow precision, stepping lightly over the grass and avoiding the small stones that could make noise. The horse had learned her presence was safe, and as she approached it, lifted its head to watch her. Its ears twitched, nostrils flared slightly, but it did not run. The girl smiled inside, knowing that patience had brought them to this moment. She crouched low to the ground and spoke softly, the gentle tone carrying across the air. The horse relaxed, lowering its head to graze again, trusting her to remain calm and careful. The cowboys were restless, planning their next attempt to catch the horse. They spoke in hushed voices, sharing strategies and criticisms, each one trying to assert his own idea of control. They set out with ropes and mounted horses, circling the prairie and searching for the wild spirit that had outsmarted them so many times. Their shouts carried across the fields, disturbing the peace and causing smaller animals to scatter. The girl watched from a distance, noticing the horse tense as it sensed danger. She did not act with haste or anger. Instead, she moved slowly, signaling with soft gestures and quiet presence, guiding the horse toward safer ground away from the cowboys. Her actions were almost invisible. They kept the horse calm and protected. Suddenly, a storm began to form in the sky, dark clouds rolling in quickly and the wind picking up strength. The horse looked toward the horizon, ears pricked and muscles tense. The girl knew the storm could be dangerous, especially if the horse panicked and ran blindly across the land. She moved closer, careful to stay within its sight, but not to overwhelm it. Her voice was calm, soothing, guiding it toward a small grove of trees that offered some shelter from the wind. The horse followed hesitantly, trusting her cues. Raindrops began to fall, light at first and then stronger, soaking the grass and the girl's clothing. The horse stood beneath the trees, breathing heavily but safe, while the girl stayed near, quietly stroking its mane and speaking gently. She felt the bond between them deepen in that moment of shared challenge, knowing that her patience and understanding had prevented fear from taking over. The cowboys watched the storm from a distance, unwilling to risk themselves in the wind and rain. They did not see the careful guidance of the girl and the quiet courage of the horse. They continued to bicker among themselves, frustrated by the failure of their attempts and by the horse's ability to evade them. Some of them began to notice the connection between the girl and the horse, a bond built on patience and trust rather than force. A few felt a strange admiration, though they would not admit it aloud. The girl ignored their presence, focusing on the horse and the immediate need to keep it calm and safe. After the storm passed, the girl led the horse to a familiar meadow where the grass was soft and the ground was dry. The horse shook off water and grazed peacefully, no longer tense or frightened. The girl sat quietly nearby, watching its movements and listening to the sounds of the prairie around them. Birds called and insects hummed, creating a natural rhythm that matched the calm of the horse. She had learned to observe and adapt to every small detail, to move with the horse rather than against it. Each interaction had become a lesson in patience, observation, and empathy. The horse responded to her presence not because it had to, but because it chose to trust her. Days turned into weeks, and the horse grew more comfortable around the girl. It began to follow her subtle cues without needing instruction, moving with her rhythm and responding to her gestures. She learned its preferences and moods, noticing which areas it liked to graze and which it avoided. She discovered its favorite paths across the prairie, where the grass was soft and the wind gentle. She understood the small habits and quirks that made the horse unique. Each observation strengthened their bond, creating a connection that could not be broken by the cowboys or by the UHE. Challenges of the land. The cowboys increased their efforts, attempting to drive the horse with groups of riders and loud noises. The horse reacted with intelligence, avoiding capture with agility and speed. The girl stayed nearby, offering quiet guidance and reassurance. She could see the stress in the horse's movements and knew when to intervene and when to remain still. Her understanding allowed her to anticipate the horse's actions and help it navigate the dangers created by the cowboys. The cowboys remained focused on force, unable to comprehend the quiet connection that had formed. Their attempts only strengthened the horse's reliance on the girl's calm presence. One afternoon, the horse faced an unexpected obstacle. A fallen tree blocked its usual path, causing it to hesitate and shift nervously. The girl approached slowly, her steps measured and her voice soft. She guided the horse around the obstacle, showing it the safe way forward without rushing or frightening it. The horse followed her, trusting her direction and responding to her calm energy. This moment reinforced the growing bond between them, showing that trust and guidance could achieve what force never could. The girl continued to spend long hours with the horse, observing its reactions to the weather, the land, and the presence of other animals. She learned to recognize subtle signs of fear and comfort, adjusting her actions accordingly. She discovered that certain times of day and certain areas of the prairie brought the horse a sense of ease. She respected these preferences, moving gently and allowing the horse to make choices rather than forcing it to act. The cowboys continued their loud attempts, but the horse increasingly ignored them. Remaining near the girl who had earned its quiet trust, the bond between the girl and the horse became a source of strength for both. The girl learned lessons in patience, observation, and empathy that went beyond her interactions with the horse. She understood the importance of moving with the rhythms of the land and the creatures within it. She experienced the power of quiet guidance and the impact of consistent, gentle presence. The horse, in turn, found a companion who could guide it safely through challenges without threatening its freedom. Each day together reinforced the connection, creating a partnership based on trust rather than domination. As the sun set over the prairie, casting long shadows across the grass, the girl and the horse moved together in harmony. The wind whispered through the trees, and the sounds of nature surrounded them. The cowboys watched from a distance, realizing that they could not capture the horse through force alone. The girl had achieved something they could not, a bond built on patience, understanding, and respect. The horse moved freely, trusting her guidance, and she moved alongside it, aware of every subtle signal and response. The prairie stretched endlessly around them, a world full of life and challenge, yet also full of beauty and connection. In that moment, the girl knew that the relationship she had built with the horse was unbreakable. A testament to the quiet power of empathy and care in a world that often valued only strength and control. The prairie stretched out endlessly under the morning sky, golden light spilling over the hills and grass. The girl walked slowly across the land, her eyes searching for the familiar dark shape of the wild horse. She moved carefully, her steps quiet and deliberate, every movement measured to avoid startling it. The horse lifted its head as she approached, ears flicking and muscles relaxing. It had grown used to her presence, learning that she brought no harm, only patience and understanding. She spoke softly, her voice calm and steady, and the horse responded with a quiet trust that could not be forced. Each day together reinforced their bond, creating a partnership built on mutual respect and care. The cowboys continued their attempts to capture the horse, yet their efforts grew increasingly frustrated. They rode in groups, shouting and circling the prairie, trying to drive the horse into traps and enclosures. The horse reacted with intelligence and speed, avoiding every attempt. The girl watched from a safe distance, observing the movements of both the horse and the cowboys. She knew when to step in with calm guidance and when to remain still, allowing the horse to make its own choices. Her patience and understanding allowed the horse to navigate dangers without fear or harm. The cowboys could not comprehend the quiet bond that had formed, relying only on force and speed. One afternoon, the horse faced a new challenge. A deep ravine blocked its usual path, and it hesitated, muscles tense and ears flicking nervously. The girl moved closer, speaking softly and making her presence known without overwhelming it. She guided the horse around the obstacle, showing it a safe way to continue. The horse followed her cues, trusting her direction, and moved past the danger. This moment reinforced the deepening connection between them, showing that trust and guidance could achieve what force never could. The cowboys, watching from a distance, could see the horse safely navigating the land but could not understand how the girl had helped without using ropes or aggression. Their frustration grew, but so did their respect, even if they did not admit it aloud. The girl continued her daily visits, observing the horse's reactions to weather changes, other animals, and the movements of people nearby. She learned to read subtle signs of comfort and unease, adjusting her actions to match the needs of the horse. She discovered the places where it preferred to graze the times of day it felt safest, and the paths it favored across the prairie. Each detail deepened her understanding and strengthened their bond. The horse increasingly relied on her presence for reassurance, not because it had to, but because it chose to trust her. The cowboys remained unable to capture it, frustrated by their reliance on force, while the girl succeeded through patience and empathy. Storms, strong winds, and sudden rain became challenges they faced together. The girl guided the horse to safe areas, speaking softly and moving slowly to calm its fears. Each experience strengthened the horse's trust in her and taught the girl new lessons in patience and observation. She learned to anticipate its reactions, guiding it without restraining or frightening it. The cowboys watched from afar, realizing that they could not achieve what the girl had accomplished. They saw the horse follow her cues and remained calm even in danger. But they did not understand the subtle communication and respect that formed the basis of their bond. Days turned into weeks, and the horse grew comfortable with the girl's presence. It followed her subtle gestures, responded to her calm voice, and moved alongside her in harmony across the prairie. She discovered more of its habits and preferences, noting which grasses it liked best, which areas provided the most comfort, and how it responded to different times of day and weather conditions. The girl respected its choices, allowing the horse freedom while offering guidance and reassurance. This balance of freedom and trust strengthened their connection and created a partnership built on understanding rather than domination. One day, the cowboys attempted a final effort to capture the horse using a coordinated strategy with ropes and multiple riders. The horse sensed danger and bolted, moving swiftly and intelligently to avoid them. The girl stayed calm, guiding it to safety without force or panic. She moved alongside it, her presence steady and reassuring. The cowboys were left behind, realizing that their methods could not overcome the bond that had formed between the girl and the horse. They watched as the horse ran freely across the prairie, trusting and confident in the girl's guidance. Respect for her skill and patience grew, even if unspoken. The girl had achieved what they could not. It's not through strength, but through understanding and care. Evenings were quiet and full of reflection. The girl would sit on a small rise, watching the horse graze or move through the grass. She appreciated the subtle beauty of each moment. The way the horse responded to her calm presence, the sounds of the prairie, and the patterns of the land. Each day brought new lessons and deeper understanding, not just of the horse, but of the rhythms of nature and the power of patience and empathy. The horse became more than an animal. It became a companion, a teacher, and a symbol of trust and freedom. Together they moved through the land with harmony and respect, a partnership that could not be broken by force or fear. The cowboys gradually accepted that they could not capture the horse. They realized that the bond formed between the girl and the wild spirit was unique, could not be replicated through strength or noise. Some felt admiration, others learned a quiet lesson in patience and observation, even if they did not admit it openly. The girl and the horse continued their journeys across the prairie, exploring new areas and discovering more about each other and the land. The girl remained attentive and careful, aware of every movement and signal from the horse. Her understanding allowed the horse to remain calm and confident. Even in the presence of challenges, the prairie itself became a partner in their story. Wind, sun, rain, and storms all shaped their experiences, teaching lessons in resilience and awareness. The girl learned to move with the rhythms of the land, reading every subtle shift in the environment. The horse responded to these cues, guided by trust and understanding. Together, they navigated challenges and dangers, always relying on patience, empathy, and careful observation. Their connection deepened, growing stronger with each shared experience and reinforcing the quiet power of respect over force. As the sun sank low in the sky, casting long shadows across the grass, the girl and the horse ran together across the prairie. The horse moved freely, but always stayed within the presence of the girl who had earned its trust. Their movements were harmonious, flowing with the land and the wind. The cowboys watched from a distance, understanding that they could not conquer what had been built through care and patience. The girl had formed a bond that could not be broken, a connection that honored the freedom and spirit of the horse while guiding it safely through the unknown challenges of the land. Evening turned to night and the prairie quieted. The girl and the horse rested in a familiar meadow, side by side. Stars appeared in the sky, reflecting in their calm and contented presence. She spoke softly, the horse listening and responding to the quiet tones of her voice. There was no need for ropes, force, or domination. Trust and empathy had created a partnership that transcended control. The horse had chosen her as a companion, She had honored its freedom while offering guidance and protection. The story of the wild horse and the girl became one of respect, patience, and understanding. The cowboys who had sought to capture it learned a lesson in humility and observation. The girl and the horse moved together across the prairie, a living testament to the power of quiet presence and gentle guidance. Their bond was unbreakable, built on trust, patience, and mutual respect. The wild horse, once untamed and defiant, had found a companion who could walk beside it without seeking to own it. And the girl had found a friend who embodied freedom and spirit, teaching lessons that would last a lifetime. Together, they faced the land with harmony, exploring the prairie, learning from each other, and celebrating the quiet power of trust and understanding.